My name is Pat Byrd. I've been working with ACE team to develop the curriculum and materials designed for the project. In this series of short lectures, I want to share information and ideas with you about the language, the grammar, and vocabulary that your students encounter in their courses at Miami-Dade. Also, I'll give a brief overviews of content-based and task-based instruction, two approaches to language teaching that have really influenced what we've been doing with ACE curriculum and materials. I hope you'll have a chance to talk over the information and ideas in these lectures with other teachers and with ACE staff. You can send questions to me through the ACE staff. The lectures will focus on, the lectures are going to focus on 5 topics: the ACE and corpus linguistics, content-based instruction, task-based instruction, academic English, and academic vocabulary. Corpus linguistics. So now I'm going to be going through and doing some definitions of terms and then giving an example of how corpus linguistics has been used in developing the curriculum and materials for the ACE project. Corpus. A corpus is a body of language materials. So when we talk about corpus linguistics, we're talking about the study of the language of a collection of materials. So the corpus can be written materials, for example, textbook chapters, or the corpus can be transcripts of speech, of things that teachers say in class, or student questions in class. And we include both kinds of materials in the ACE corpus. What is corpus linguistics? When you take a corpus, a collection of language, and study that, that's what we're talking about with corpus linguistics. But it's special in that corpus linguistics studies language as it is really used. So we're working from real-life samples of language to find out what people do when they speak. So we can analyze the corpus of textbook chapters or of teacher lectures, and then understand more about the real words that the teachers use and the grammar that's likely to show up in those materials. Corpus linguistics uses 2 steps to gather the information about how language is used. The first step is to create the corpus and analyze the materials using computer programs. So with ACE, we created a corpus by collecting all the textbook materials and the course syllabi and everything that had been written, and created a written corpus. And then we videotaped a lot of lectures by teachers and transcribed those. So the corpus is that collection of materials from Miami-Dade classes. Then we analyzed those and came up with vocabulary lists to see the most frequently used words. And then we looked at the words that go with other words, most frequent phrases that important words are used in, and we got some grammar lists too. So step 1 is to create the corpus and get all these lists of information about the language that's being used. The step 2 is really a very important one and a very difficult one. You go back to the materials, to the lecture videotapes, or to the textbook chapters, and try to figure out why the frequently used language is used so frequently. What's so powerful about that language that we want to keep using it a lot? For example, if we see a lot of past tense verbs, then we go back and look, and usually what we find is a narrative of some type. The history of psychology, or a retelling of a famous experiment in biology. So past tense has a special use in text. A lot of times if you find questions in the sample that you have, questions and pronouns I and you, what you have is a written version of a conversation. And often in a textbook we find that when the writer is trying to do some rhetorical questions, or to be very informal and more interesting and not so difficult for students to read. So corpus linguistics then is getting these samples of materials, studying them, finding about the language that the students are using. And why do we want to do that for an English for Academic Purposes program? By looking at those materials that the students are using in their general education classes at Miami-Dade, we can know for sure and not just be guessing about. We know for sure the vocabulary the students have to use, the grammar they're going to encounter and use, and the differences in the different kinds of academic communication they have to use. So the language of lectures and asking questions in class is different from the language of the textbooks materials they read, and different from the language of the course syllabi that they have to read and follow and obey. So by having all of this information about the language used in the materials the students have to use, we can base materials, lessons, assessment, curricula on the real language that's really used, and not just on our guesses or our memories of when we were freshmen, or really just our desires because we've taught it that way so many times. So the ACE corpus, again, is all of the written materials given to students are required by the syllabi for 4 general education courses, often taken by EAP students. So we looked at psychology, biology, English composition, and humanities. And then we got a sample of classroom talk captured with videos that were made, and then transcribed those videos and checked the transcription. It's hard to do, to get a really good transcription of the videos, and then analyzed those to see how the language is being used in the classroom. For example, if a student had read a particular textbook chapter, then how did this teacher use that language in talking about the content of that chapter? The ACE corpus is 2 things, and this is really important. The ACE corpus is the version in a computer format that can be analyzed using computer software and used to develop all these reference materials. So there are big binders of reference materials that show all the most common words and the grammar and things of that kind. So the information we pull from the corpus. But the corpus also includes all the original things. So the ACE staff have copies of the textbooks and the course syllabi, and maybe most important of all, they have copies of the videos of the classes, so that you as a teacher can go in and take a look at what's happening in a biology class or a psychology class or English composition, and have a sense of how the teaching in those fields may differ from the way that you're accustomed to teaching yourself. Here's an example of the kind of material we've been getting from the ACE corpus. So the 15 most frequent words, and these were used in all 4 of the courses in the corpus, and the most frequent, starting with life, is the most frequent word in all of this material, down through cells. You look at this list, it shows 2 things immediately to me, that there are some words, content words, that are showing up all over the place. Life, time, work, new, century, people, human, world, art, cells. The likelihood is that sometimes the meaning is going to be different, that when they're talking about life in biology, it's probably a different meaning of life from talking about life in humanities. So the students have a common word, but that word is used in different ways in different contexts. The list also includes words that are very frequently used, but are words that are for guiding the reader through the textbook. So words like to and first are very likely there to, first I'm going to do that, and second I'm going to do the other. The word figure is being used to refer to graphic elements in the text. So look at figure number 1 would be an example of how that might be used. Or see, often the direction to the reader to see something in the textbook, see figure 1, or see the illustration, or see the example. And called is very often used for giving a definition. Something is called something else. So 2 kinds of language in even the 15 most frequent words, words of content and words that are directing the reader through the materials. So 2 different kinds of things that students have to be dealing with as they read those textbooks. They're learning the content and figuring out what the writer is trying to get them to do as they go through that content. The most important word then is the word life. And it'd be interesting to know, the question that we started asking was, well, how is life used in the ACE materials? How are students going to encounter it? And so some general things, students will see something of life, or very likely would encounter your life, so that the material is talking to you or is talking generally about everybody's life, or his life, talking about a particular person. So, and some verb things, life can, whatever. Life as, life in, very highly often used with those prepositions, or maybe as a conjunction. And then the two verbs most likely used are life is and life was. And that's a hint that life is being used in this academic writing, where verbs are often very short, where the nouns are often very, very long. The word life is also used in a lot of set combinations: real life, daily life, everyday life, political life, own life, personal life, urban life, life forms, life on earth, life cycle, life and death, life expectancy, and a number of others, so that students not only have to know the word life and how it might be different in biology from humanities or psychology, but they also have to know and use these set phrases that are used in particular combinations every time they're used. Again, and finally, for this mini lecture, the value of corpus studies for what we're doing in teaching English for academic purposes. By studying the materials that students are assigned and encounter in their Miami-Dade courses, we learn about the vocabulary students have to have. We learn about the grammar, how words are used in sentences, what students have to understand as they read, what they have to be able to write for their test and special writing assignments. When we look back at the materials in the corpus, we can understand why certain language is being used. So then we see, because there's a lot of past tense, for example, a lot of these little narratives are showing up. Why is that happening in a biology textbook or a psychology textbook? We can get a clearer picture, not just of the linguistic challenges of general education courses, and those are certainly considerable, the vocabulary, the grammar, but we also start to see the academic skills required for using that language, the ability to read certain kinds of things, to listen to lectures and take notes, and to ask questions. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to talking with you about some other topics that lie behind what we've done with the ACE project.